Dear students, in continuation to the previous lecture on sericulture, continue with the same as part 2, the production of silk. Now the silkworms are fed with mulberry leaves, and after the fourth moult, they climb a twig placed near them and spin their silken cocoons. The silk is a continuous filament comprising fibroin protein secreted from the two salivary glands in the head of each worm and a gum called sericin which cements the filaments. The sericin is removed by placing the cocoons in hot water which frees the silk filaments and readies them for reeling. This is known as degumming process. The immersion in hot water also kills the silk moth pupa. Single filaments are combined to form the thread which is drawn under tension through several guides and wound onto reels. The threads may be plied to form a yarn. After drying, the raw silk is packed according to the quality. The silkworm caterpillar builds its cocoon by producing and surrounding itself with a long continuous fiber or filament. Liquid secretions from two large glands within the insect emerge from the spinneret, a single exit tube in the head, hardening upon exposure to air and forming twin filaments composed of fibroin and protein material. A second pair of glands secretes sericin, a gummy substance that cements the two filaments together. Because an emerging moth would break the cocoon filament, the larva is killed in the cocoon by steam or hot air chrysalis stage. Now, what is silk? Silk is a continuous filament within each cocoon having a usable length of about 600 to 900 meters, that is about 2000 to 3000 feet. It is freed by softening the binding sericin and then locating the filament end with unwinding or reeling the filaments from several cocoons at the same time, sometimes with a slight twist forming a single strand. Several silk strands, each too thin for most users, are twisted together to make thicker, stronger yarn in the process called throwing, producing various yarns differing according to the amount and direction of the twist impulse. Now processing silk from the cocoons. These cocoons are used to obtain silk threads. When the cocoons are exposed to the sun or steam or boiled, the silk fiber gets separated. This process of getting silk threads from the cocoons to use it as a silk fabric is known as reeling of the silk. Reeling of the silk is carried out by special machines. These machines unwind the fibers of silk or threads from the cocoon. The silk fibers are then converted into silk threads to make different kinds of silk fabrics like the silk saris, etc. by the weaver. The degumming process leaves silk lustrous and semi-transparent with a smooth surface that does not readily retain soil. Silk has good strength, resisting breakage when subjected to weights of about 4 grams per denier. Wetting reduces strength by about 15 to 25%. A silk filament can be stretched about 20% beyond its original length before breaking but does not immediately resume its original length when stretched more than about 2%. Silk lower in density than such fibers as cotton, wool and rayon in moisture absorbent, retaining as much as a third of its weight in moisture without feeling damp and has excellent dyeing properties. It is more heat resistant than wool, decomposing at about 170 degrees centigrade, and that is 340 degrees Fahrenheit. Silk loses strength over a long period of time without appropriate storage condition and tends to decompose with extensive exposure to sunlight but is rarely attacked by mildew. It is not harmed by mild alkaline solutions and common dry cleaning solvents. Friction imparts a static charge, especially in low humidity. The rustling sound or scroop associated with crisp silk fabrics is not a natural property of the fiber but is developed by processing treatments, and it does not indicate quality as is sometimes thought to believed to. Rearing of silkworm to produce raw silk is called sericulture. And in this process, silkworms are reared at appropriate temperature and humidity to get silk threads from cocoons. Now you see so many cocoons. These are all reared, and from these would be taken the silk. Rearing of silkworm. In the beginning, the female silk moth lays hundreds of eggs. These eggs are stored over a clean paper or piece of cloth. These eggs are then sold to the silkworm farmers. The farmers then keep the eggs under the accurate temperature and humidity at a clean place. They are warmed to most appropriate temperature to hatch eggs to produce larvae or caterpillar, and this process is done when the mulberry leaves have fresh crops of leaves. The caterpillar eats this mulberry leaves day and night voraciously, and it grows in size. Bamboo trays are used to keep these caterpillars, and some freshly chopped mulberry leaves are kept in the tray. After 30 to 40 days approximately, the caterpillars stop eating and leaves the leaves, and then it moves inside the small chambers in the bamboo trays to spin the cocoons. Now this is the important part of the sericulture. These are produced by the secretion of liquid protein from their salivary glands. Small racks are given in the tray so that the cocoons get attached to those racks. Silk moths are developed inside the cocoon. Silk containing sericin is called raw silk. The gummy substance affording protection during processing is usually retained until the yarn or fabric stage and is removed by boiling the silk in soap and water, leaving it soft and lustrous with weight reduced by as much as 30%. Spun silk is made from short lengths obtained from damaged cocoons or broken off during processing, twisting together to make yarn. The thickness of silk filament yarn is expressed in terms of denier, the number of grams of weight per 9,000 meters, that is approximately 9,846 yards of length. Silk is sometimes in a process called weighting, treated with a finishing substance such as metallic salts to increase weight, add density, and improve draping qualities. Steps of rearing are as follows. In sericulture, the silkworm rearing process begins with the laying of eggs by the female silk moth. Typically 300 to 500 eggs are obtained from one silk moth. These eggs, which are laid on a paper or a cardboard sheet, are then disinfected with the help of 2% formalin solution. A feeding bed is prepared on a rearing tray by sprinkling chopped mulberry leaves onto it. The hatched larvae are transferred into this tray via a process known as brushing. In order to maintain humidity, foam strips are soaked in water and placed on the tray. The silkworm larvae initially have a good appetite. They eat enthusiastically and voraciously until its final stage is reached. As they grow, their appetite slowly diminishes until their active stage. At this stage, the silkworm, after reaching maturity, the larvae begin searching for hospitable places to begin their pupation. At this stage, the body of the silkworm shrinks and becomes translucent. These mature larvae now wrap themselves in a cocoon by secreting saliva from the two salivary glands on their heads. This saliva solidifies and becomes silk when it comes in contact with air. Generally, the cocoon is spun in 2 to 3 days. However, some varieties of silkworm can take about 4 days to spin their cocoons. Silk reeling. Now, inside the cocoons, the larvae undergo metamorphosis and turn into pupae. The harvesting of silk from these cocoons is the final stage of sericulture. First, the pupae inside the cocoon are killed by boiling the cocoon and exposing it to steam and dry heat. This process is called stifling. Now, the silk filaments are removed from the dead cocoon via a process called reeling. When the cocoons are placed in boiling water for approximately 15 minutes, the adhesion of the silk thread reduces, enabling the separation of individual filaments. Now, these filaments are twisted into a thread with the help of a series of guides and pulleys. This silk is then reboiled in order to improve its luster. One thread of silk contains approximately 50 silk filaments. However, over 900 meters of filament can be obtained from a single cocoon. Thus, raw silk is obtained from the silkworm and the sericulture process is completed. Now, you can see this is the rearing of silkworm to produce silk. Now, these are the threads which are reeled out during the process of sericulture from the cocoon. Now, the type of silk, if we see the type of silk, mulberry silk is yellow-green in color. The array silk is creamy white or brick red in color. The tussar silk is copper brown in color, while the muga silk is golden in color. Some important challenges faced in sericulture. Now, these are the challenges. The pebrine disease can infect the eggs, resulting in their death before the hatching of the larva. Any larvae affected by this disease develop dark spots and become lethargic. Viral infections in the larvae may result in the shrinkage of their bodies. They may also start giving off an unpleasant odor, that is, smell. Other viral infections, such as cytoplasmic polyhedrosis, can cause the larvae to lose their appetites. The musardine infection caused by fungi can cause the larvae to become extremely feeble and eventually die. The larvae of dermestid beetles can bore into the silkworm cocoons and eat the pupae. Silk cannot be reeled from these damaged cocoons. Some mites produce a toxic substance that kills the silkworms. So,